May 13th, 1943. The parched hills outside Bizerte, Tunisia, shimmer beneath the North African sun. Corporal Hans Meyer of the German Afrika Korps drags his boots through the dust, his Mauser slung uselessly across his back. The battle is over. The 5th Panzer Army has fallen silent. Columns of German and Italian troops, sunburned, hollow-eyed, and stunned, shuffle toward Allied lines, their white flags trembling in the dry wind. All around him, the desert hums with the groan of captured machinery. Burned out half-tracks, shattered 88 Muir guns, and the rumble of American GMC trucks corralling prisoners. The smell of fuel and sweat hangs heavy. A young American sergeant, sleeves rolled up, points toward a waiting convoy. "All right, fellas, line up. You're going to camp number 2. Hans doesn't understand every word, but the gesture is clear. Surrender, compliance, survival. As night falls over the desert, nearly 250,000 Axis soldiers, Germans and Italians, are now prisoners of the Allies. They had fought Rommel's war, believing the Führer's promises of glory. But the Afrika Korps' dream of an impregnable empire has turned to dust and diesel fumes. In the days that follow, the prisoners are marched to ports under armed escort. Some whisper rumors. They'll be sent to England, maybe to Canada. But when Meyer steps aboard a Liberty ship in Oran, he realizes this is no short journey. The ship's name, SS Henry Gibbons, and the smell of canned peaches in the galley tell him this is bound for America. He glances at the horizon one last time as the African coast fades. "Knock America," one of his comrades mutters under his breath. To America. The word feels impossible. The enemy homeland. The land of jazz, Coca-Cola, and limitless factories. The same nation his propaganda officer had called soft and decadent. Yet now, it's where thousands like him will spend the rest of the war. What awaits them there would defy everything they'd been told. June 2nd, 1943, North Atlantic. The Liberty ship creaks under gray skies and cold rain. Beneath the deck, hundreds of German POWs sit shoulder to shoulder, the rhythmic groan of the engines masking their murmured prayers and coughs. The air reeks of diesel and salt, but the food, real bread, thick soup, and coffee, is shockingly good. Hans Meyer stares at the tin tray in front of him, still steaming. The coffee burns his tongue, but he drinks it anyway. It's the first warm cup he's had since El Alamein. Around him, the men exchange bewildered glances. "This can't be right," mutters Corporal Ernst Riehl. "They feed us like guests." "They'll fatten us up for work," another scoffs. "You'll see." Above deck, a U.S. Navy guard leans against a railing, watching the waves roll across the endless ocean. He's 20 years old, from Kansas. He's never seen this many Germans in one place. They don't look like monsters, just men, weary and thin. By mid-June, the ships approach the American coast. As dawn breaks, the horizon reveals a sight that leaves the prisoners speechless. New York Harbor. Even from the distance, they see the Empire State Building piercing the clouds, ships swarming like ants in the water, cranes swinging steel in every direction. "Look at it," whispers Meyer, "the land of our enemies." But there's no hatred in his voice, only disbelief. The skyline seems alive, pulsing with the kind of power they'd been told the Allies lacked. When the ship docks, MPs guide them onto trains marked War Department property. The windows are covered, the routes secret. For days, the trains thunder through endless farmland, cornfields, rivers, forests, across a continent so vast it feels unreal. Their destination, the heart of America. Some will end up in Texas, others in Iowa, Nebraska, or Mississippi. Nearly 425,000 German prisoners of war will be scattered across the United States before the conflict ends, confined in more than 500 camps. But what none of them expect is the reception they're about to receive. June 18th, 1943, Hearne, Texas. The train screeches to a halt under a blistering sun. Outside, barbed wire glints like silver, stretching across a dusty expanse of prairie. Guard towers stand at each corner, manned by soldiers in khaki, their M1 Garands glinting in the light. A wooden sign reads simply, Camp Hearne, U.S. Army Internment Facility. Corporal Hans Meyer and his comrades step down, blinking against the glare. They brace themselves for punishment, for deprivation, for what they assume will be Allied vengeance. But what greets them instead is order, efficiency, and, most baffling of all, courtesy. An American lieutenant with a clipboard calls out, "You'll be deloused, examined by medical, then assigned to barracks. Follow instructions and you'll be treated fairly. That's the Geneva Convention, gentlemen." The Geneva Convention. Most of the prisoners exchange uneasy looks. Few had believed it actually meant anything. Inside the camp, the men are issued uniforms, stenciled PW in black paint, canvas boots, blankets, soap, and a toothbrush. Small luxuries compared to what Germany's own conscripts were getting at the front. When the mess hall opens that evening, the line falls silent. On the menu board, beef stew, potatoes, green beans, bread, butter, and coffee. Hans lifts a spoonful to his mouth, tasting disbelief. Real beef, real vegetables. Around him, other men eat in stunned quiet. Some mutter prayers of thanks, others can't finish their portions, overcome by guilt and confusion. One prisoner, a former Wehrmacht cook named Otto Lenz, whispers, "My brother is freezing near Kursk with the 9th Army. He hasn't had meat in months. And here we are." Across the wire, U.S. guards eat the same food from the same kitchen. It's policy. The War Department, following Geneva rules, requires prisoners to receive the same rations as American soldiers. Each morning, they are given cigarettes, newspapers, and even Red Cross care packages filled with chocolate, jam, and soap from Switzerland. The contrast with life back home gnaws at them. Letters from Germany, when they arrive, tell of rationing, air raids, and hunger. Children living on bread crusts and thin soup. Yet here, the enemy eats 3 full meals a day. At night, the camp echoes with distant harmonicas and low laughter. The Americans keep their distance, but they don't abuse or starve the men. It's unsettling. Hans lies awake, staring at the wooden beams above his bunk. "What if everything they told us about the enemy," he whispers, "was wrong?" Outside, the cicadas sing, and the Texas stars blaze overhead, silent witnesses to a truth neither side expected. July 1943. Hearne, Texas. The days fall into rhythm. Roll call. Breakfast, work detail, supper, lights out. The war still rages across the Atlantic. But inside Camp Hearne, life unfolds with a curious sense of civility. By midsummer, the German prisoners have built gardens, small workshops, even a makeshift theater out of scrap lumber. On Sundays, the sound of hymns drifts through the camp chapel. Voices of men who once marched beneath the swastika now carried by the warm Texan breeze. One afternoon, Hans Meyer joins a group unloading sacks of flour for the camp kitchen. The supervising American sergeant, tall, calm, maybe 25, pauses to offer them water. "Hot one today," he says, passing around canteens. Hans hesitates, then accepts. "Danke," he mutters. "Don't mention it," the sergeant replies with a faint smile. "You're human too." The simplicity of the moment shakes him more than any interrogation. Word spreads among the prisoners that the Americans aren't just following orders. They seem genuinely decent. One guard lets them listen to a baseball game on his radio. Another brings a deck of cards to the fence, trading a pack of lucky strikes for a hand-carved chess piece. The Americans' easy confidence, their abundance, and their lack of hatred bewilder the Germans. They had expected cruelty, humiliation, revenge. Instead, they find an odd mixture of firmness and fairness. By autumn, the camp library boasts over 1,000 donated books. The Red Cross delivers instruments, violins, accordions, guitars, and soon, the barracks echo with Schubert and folk songs from Bavaria. The prisoners even form self-governing committees, electing leaders, organizing sports, and publishing handwritten newsletters. For men who had spent years under totalitarian command, the mere act of voting feels subversive. Still, not everyone accepts the new reality. A few diehards, ardent Nazis who still cling to Hitler's vision, try to reassert control, intimidating others who express sympathy for the Americans. Secret informants pass notes to U.S. officers about threats and underground camp courts. But even among the faithful, doubts grow. When the first mailbags from Germany arrive in December, the letters confirm what many feared. Berlin is burning, cities in ruins, families starving. The contrast between home and captivity becomes unbearable. Hans unfolds a note from his mother in Stuttgart. "We sleep in the cellar now. There is no coal. Your sister trades bread for potatoes when she can. We pray for an end to this nightmare." He stares at the stew in front of him, thick, rich, steaming. The guilt settles deep in his gut. At night, as the wind rattles the tin roofs, conversations shift. Some speak not of victory, but of what will come after. Of whether a nation so deceived can ever rebuild. Hans writes in his journal, "I thought America would break me with its strength. Instead, it's breaking me with kindness." Outside the fence, Christmas lights glow faintly from the guard towers. Inside, the prisoners sing "Stille Nacht," their voices trembling, carried through the cold Texas night. March 1944, Camp Concordia, Kansas. Snow flurries whip across the plains, dusting the barbed wire and guard towers in white. The war feels far away here. No bombs, no hunger, no marching boots. The prisoners of war, thousands of miles from the Reich, have begun to change. In the mess hall, a young German lieutenant named Kurt Schreiber, once a loyal Nazi youth leader, now spends his afternoons reading an English grammar book. "If I'm to survive this war," he mutters, "I must learn the language of the victors." Around him, a quiet revolution is taking place. The U.S. War Department, under the Intellectual Diversion Program, has begun distributing books, literature, history, even philosophy, to POW camps across the nation. Goethe and Shakespeare share the same shelves. For men who had grown up on Hitler's propaganda, it's intoxicating. Lectures are organized by American professors from nearby universities. Films are screened showing American cities, farms, and factories. The purpose is subtle. Re-education, to show these men what democracy actually looks like. Many of the Germans scoff at first, calling it soft propaganda. But as months pass, curiosity wins out. They debate freely in barracks, something none dared do back home. Hans Meyer listens to one discussion about liberty, his pencil tapping on a wooden table. "In Germany," he says quietly, "obedience was strength. Here, strength seems to come from questioning." Some of the guards even encourage it. Sergeant Miller, the same Kansan who once guarded the perimeter, now volunteers to teach a small group about American civics. He stands before them, chalk in hand, sketching 3 branches of government on a blackboard. "See," he says, "our leaders aren't gods. They can be voted out." The Germans exchange skeptical looks, but the idea lodges deep. By summer, the camps are thriving communities. Prisoners build model towns, stage plays, and run orchestras. Baseball games pit Team Berlin against Team Munich. Some POWs are even sent out on farm labor details, picking cotton, harvesting wheat, and mending fences alongside American civilians. Farmers quickly notice something strange. These enemies are polite, disciplined, even grateful. They work hard and laugh easily. One farmer's wife, interviewed years later, remembered, "They'd eat supper with us, say grace, then sing songs in German. They weren't monsters. They were boys." The kindness doesn't just change how the Germans see their captors. It begins to change how Americans see the Germans. Newspapers call them the best-fed prisoners in the world. Some citizens protest the generosity, demanding stricter treatment. But the army holds firm. The U.S. will uphold the Geneva Convention because the world is watching. That commitment becomes a quiet weapon of its own for men like Hans, who once believed in the superiority of the Reich. The experience is disarming. The enemy has not only conquered them in war, but in morality. By the end of 1944, word filters through the camps. The Allies have landed in Normandy, Paris is free, and the German front is collapsing. The prisoners crowd around radios, faces pale. Some weep, others stare blankly at the ground. The empire they fought for is dying. And yet, across the ocean, they are fed, sheltered, even taught compassion. Hans writes in his journal again, "The Americans fight with machines, but they conquer with humanity." May 8, 1945, Camp Hearn, Texas. The radio crackles through the mess hall, the air thick with silence. "Germany has surrendered unconditionally," says the announcer. "The war in Europe is over." For a long moment, no one speaks. Then, one by one, spoons stop clinking. Men who once saluted Hitler now stare at their plates, hollow-eyed and trembling. Some whisper prayers, others weep openly. Hans Meyer sits motionless. He thinks of Stuttgart, his mother's letter, the cellar, the air raids, of comrades buried in sand dunes along the Libyan coast, of the Reich that promised eternity, now gone in fire and rubble. Outside, the guards lower the stars and stripes to half-mast, out of respect for the dead on both sides. A strange quiet falls over the camp. Victory and defeat blur into something that feels like mourning. In the weeks that follow, the War Department begins the massive task of repatriation. But there's no rush. Europe lies in ruins, its borders redrawn, its cities flattened. Ships are scarce, and the displaced number in the millions. The Germans will wait months, some even years, before they can go home. During that time, something remarkable happens. The POW camps evolve into microcosms of rebirth. The Americans, now preparing for peace, allow education programs to expand. Former soldiers attend lectures on democracy, ethics, and the rebuilding of Europe. Many write essays denouncing Nazism. Others volunteer to mentor younger inmates. A few men even begin to dream of returning to America one day. Not as prisoners, but as immigrants. In the fall of 1945, Hans is transferred to Camp Algona, Iowa. There, he helps harvest corn for local farmers, earning a few cents a day credited to his account. The old hostility has melted away. The locals wave as they pass in trucks, sometimes even dropping off pies or newspapers at the gate. One evening, after work, a farmer named Tom Daniels hands Hans a folded photograph. It's of his family, smiling, gathered around a dinner table. "When you go home," Tom says softly, "remember this. Not all Americans are your enemies." Hans doesn't know how to answer. He only nods, feeling a lump rise in his throat. By early 1946, transport ships begin carrying prisoners back across the Atlantic. The journey feels infinitely longer this time. The men know what awaits them. A homeland shattered, families gone, cities reduced to ashes. When Hans steps off the ship at Bremerhaven, The wind carries the acrid scent of smoke and ruin. The once proud German ports are skeletons of steel. Civilians scavenge among rubble for food. Children play in bomb craters. A Red Cross worker hands him a bowl of thin soup and a pamphlet titled "Germany's New Beginning." He looks down at the watery broth and can't help remembering the beef stew in Texas, the laughter of his guards, the songs that drifted across the wire under starlit skies. The realization settles in with quiet devastation. The enemy had treated him better than his own nation ever did. In the years that follow, thousands of former POWs write letters back to their camp towns, thanking Americans for their humanity. Some even return to visit, shaking the hands of the men who once stood guard over them. A few marry American women, building new lives in the country they once fought to destroy. Hans, now a carpenter in Stuttgart, keeps a small token tucked away in a drawer, a silver spoon stamped U.S. Army. When his son asks why he keeps it, he smiles faintly. "It reminds me," he says, "that even in war, decency can win." The legacy of those camps would ripple quietly through history, not through battles or victories, but through compassion. The Americans, in feeding their enemies well, had done more than uphold the Geneva Convention. They had planted the first fragile seeds of reconciliation. If this story made you see the human side of war in a new light, then make sure to subscribe to the channel for more untold moments of World War II. War II history. Here, we bring to life the real people, the choices, and the emotions behind the headlines. Stories where compassion rises above conflict and history becomes more than just dates in a book. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because every week, a new story from the war will return to life, told with truth, detail, and heart.